The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. So, I'm going to be talking about jealousy. And I'm sure none of you are aware of a jealous thought here. Oh, am I talking too softly? Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. I have my hearing aids in and everything sounds really loud. This is my first talk since I've had hearing aids. So the topic of jealousy came up as a good thing to talk about because I hadn't been aware of being jealous for a while. And then I could feel myself being drawn into it, and I didn't want to go there. And sometimes there is a karmic tie with someone, and we're more jealous of that person. And jealousy can be dramatic, or it can be over very small things. Like someone bought a new coat, and suddenly we want one as well, although we didn't care a few minutes before. I was told an interesting story about a lay trainee who loved bird watching. And he was out bird watching one day with a friend, and they were sitting in a park. Well, he was sitting in a park and the other one went off, and he was just very peaceful and calm and enjoying the day. And then the other person came back and said, "Oh, I found this bird that we haven't seen before." And they both ran off to see the bird, and the bird was gone. And the person said his day was ruined. And so he was miserable because of perhaps the jealousy of his friend seeing the bird, and he hadn't seen the bird. That's how jealousy can work. We're fine one moment, and then we hear or see something that we want and become jealous. We can simply be with the jealousy until it passes, and jealousy can be a very painful emotion. Or we can go with it and cause all kinds of suffering. The more we have been training and learning to be still, the more likely we will be able to be still with it and allow ourselves to experience the pain. Jealousy isn't bad. It is a common emotion. It is better to allow ourselves to just be with it than to try and make it go away or ignore it. Probably one of the most difficult forms of jealousy comes out of relationships. I'm going to be talking a little bit about this booklet, the Mandala of the Buddha Mother's Refuge of All Beings, which are Dharma talks given by Reverend Master Koten in 2004 when he led a retreat here. And it's called The Mandala of the Buddha Mother's Refuge of All Beings, because there's a lot of good stuff in here about jealousy and how to train with it. So as Reverend Master Koten says, jealousy is one of the gateways into the mandala of training. I already said that. So, what's the mandala? Well, I'm just going to read from, I don't know much about mandalas, so I'm just going to read from a little bit from the introduction that he puts in this book. The mandala is a map of training consisting of circles, each of which must be traveled completely before entering the next. We enter the mandala at the gate of our koan. Walk the circle of the gatekeepers fully, and then enter the circle of the offering bodhisattvas again, by means of our own koan. After traveling this circle fully, we may enter the circle of the Buddhas, and thus to the center. Having reached the true center, we may see that it embraces the entire path, the entire mandala, from the very beginning, and that without abandoning the true center, we return by means of the circles to be of benefit to all beings. Go in and out, says the scripture. If studied carefully, this is the path of the bloodline of the Buddhas and ancestors. So if you want to find out more about mandalas and somewhat of what I've been saying, you can take a look at this book. I'm sure it's up in the guest house, isn't it? It's a really good book. So he says there are 6 gateways into this mandala, one of which is jealousy and envy. So this is the first gateway that Reverend Master Koten talks about, because he says it is his particular koan and that of most Westerners. So if you have difficulty with jealousy, know that you are not alone. And I want to emphasize that it's not bad. It's our way in. It's one of our ways in if that happens to be one thing we have difficulty with. Now I'd like to read to you a couple of things he says about training. There is nothing in this life that is of more value than to look at ourselves, to look at the contents of our own mind, to learn about ourselves. All external activity to benefit others must derive from this. The Bodhisattva vows to rescue all beings begin with the contents of our own minds. So meditation. If we cannot be still and compassionate towards the contents of our own minds, how shall we ever be still and compassionate towards all sentient beings? So I think that's really important, and I'm sure you've all heard this over and over again, to be compassionate to yourself. Okay, page 16. So here it says, we begin with the Buddha family, which is the conversion of jealousy and envy. This conversion being the embodiment of the precept regarding stealing, taking that which is not given, and the precept regarding speaking against others. Both of these arise out of the poison of envy, jealousy, inadequacy, linking across to pride on the other side of the mandala, all of them being interrelated. I'm afraid I'm going to be reading a lot, but we'll get through this. Okay, second and third. Okay. To arrive at the realm of all accomplishing action, which is the realm of this particular Buddha, we apply the precepts, 2 of which can apply to each of the Buddha families. First, the precept regarding stealing, which in its oldest formulation is to take that which is not given. As the precept says, stealing arises from the thought that one does not have something that everyone else does. The same holds true regarding the precepts about speaking against others. Both arise from the separating off of self and other. When we are jealous of someone, we may speak against them, criticize them, say something that misrepresents their motive for doing something, and we may not even be aware that it comes from jealousy. We may think that we are right. If we do this, we are breaking both precepts. We are stealing the good name of someone else, and we are obviously speaking against others. Since preparing this talk, I have seen that I have done this, and I will try not to do it again. Just sit with the jealousy, and don't act on it in any form. In Reverend Master Jiyu's commentary on Dogen's precepts, she says this about stealing. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read 2 lines. Remember that he who counts another's treasure can never have his own. He who steals can only ever rob himself. Reverend Master Koten says that when you enter this pathway into the mandala of training, the pain increases, and this is good. If the pain gets bad enough, maybe we will stop and take a look at it, instead of running away or acting on it to relieve the pain. I used to want reassurance every time I felt like someone was doing better than me and being recognized for that. And this had to do with being named a master. I finally decided, so the pain would be great, and I'd want something badly, and I would go to someone else for them to reassure me that I was actually okay. But one time I decided I was not going to do this, and I was just going to sit with the pain no matter how bad it was. And I did, and I survived. And soon after that, I was recognized. So it was kind of interesting the way it worked. Reverend Master Koten talks a lot about facing the contents of your own mind, stillness, meditation, and precepts. I want to just read one more thing here. It is the precepts that are the great actions of the bodhisattvas, the great actions of the Buddhas, the all-accomplishing actions. The answer to the question, how do I benefit the world, is to apply the precepts as rigorously and thoroughly as possible, and make them one's skin, flesh, bones, and marrow. When you do that, then what you need to do to benefit the world will become apparent, and indeed you will not be able to prevent benefiting others. The precepts are more than simply a way of stopping bad karma. They are more than simply a way of controlling the mind. They are the bodhicitta, the very embodiment of the aspiration towards enlightenment, the Buddha nature, the way-seeking mind. I had a vivid dream once, possibly a vision, somebody said, quite a number of years ago. A number of monks and I believe some lay trainees were being pulled up one by one into this beautiful land that was peaceful and bright. And eventually I was pulled up as well, and I loved it there. And I asked someone, can I stay here? And they said, no, not until you have converted your anger and jealousy. So jealousy and anger have been a koan of mine. And sometimes we think when we have an experience that that's it. And now everything is great and we can just go on from there. But an experience is just an experience, and we have to train with whatever is our own difficulty. And so obviously anger and jealousy were pretty strong for me at the time. And I honestly couldn't convert them at that time. But I'm doing better now, I think. Somebody can say otherwise, but conversion is accomplished by sitting still, looking within no matter how painful, and not acting on these harmful feelings. And this takes a lot of faith, which grows if we continue to train and listen to the still small voice of Buddha nature within, which will show us the way when we think that we are lost. So this has been something that I have found that I think some people felt like I would never make it and I would never continue my training. And yet every time I felt lost, there was something inside or something outside which pulled me up and kept me going. So do not ever get discouraged. So this is, I'm not going to read from Reverend Master Koten this time, but this is a description of jealousy which I happen to like. This is the 48th less grave precept. In the scripture of Brahma's Net, there are 10 grave precepts, and 48 less grave precepts. So this is on committing acts that interfere with the teaching of the Dharma. Disciples of the Buddha, say that one of you with a well-inclined heart were to renounce the world to be a monk, and then began to teach the precept of the Buddha to some ruler or official, even though it were in order to gain personal renown and benefits, or to secure your livelihood. If you were then put into shackles and held as prisoner, slave, or soldier through the intrigues of some monk of either gender, or of any disciple of the precepts of the Buddhas, so this is someone out of jealousy acting, the one responsible for your downfall would be comparable to a worm within a lion's body, which gnaws away at the lion's flesh. For such a disciple of the Buddha, through acting in a non-Buddhist way, has harmed the Buddha's teaching, which neither devas nor demons can destroy. I love that, a worm in a lion's body, gnawing away. So jealousy can feel like that sometimes, if you give into it. So now I've kind of moved things around in different places, so I have to kind of look. Okay. We were doing the Shurangama ceremony recently, where we recite the Shurangama litany, and something jumped out at me, probably because of preparing this talk. And I have to tell you, and I'm going to tell you, I was going to tell you later, but I'll have to tell you that since working on this talk, I have seen jealousy arise in me over and over and over again. In fact, this morning, when I was eating my breakfast, I saw somebody walk by with a piece of fruit that I didn't know was being offered and that I happened to love. And suddenly, just this greed for that piece of fruit, but I was already stuffed. So, and jealousy of the person who had that piece of fruit. So, I mean, that's pretty ridiculous. But I think for me, preparing this talk has helped me a lot with my jealousy, because every time it arises, I just sit with it. And I hope I can do this after I'm done with this talk. But I just sit with it, and it goes. And I don't cause myself incredible suffering by longing for that which I don't have. So something jumped out at me when we were doing the Shurangama litany, and I hadn't seen it this way before, but there's this part that says, if there are any sentient beings with a corrupt and malignant mind, or with an evil mind, or with a brutal and raging mind, or with a hostile mind, or with an unfriendly mind, may they give rise to this invocation, cleanse themselves with it by speaking it aloud, praying it in whispers, or reading it silently, lest they rob us of our first conception of the truth, or rob us of the developing child within the hara, or rob him of his blood, or rob him of his skin, so on and on. His innocence, his brightness, his talents, his flowering, his fruition, the harvest of his fruits. I always thought this meant that someone with an unfriendly mind or a hostile mind could rob someone else of their opening up to the truth. And then I saw, no, it's our own mind. And this really fit in with jealousy. It's our own mind that becomes hostile or raging or whatever, that robs us of us knowing the truth. So we just have to be careful of the things that go on in our minds and that cause us to be very unhappy. Our anger and jealousy, if not trained with, can be the cause of our own misery and not allow us to know the fruits of training. We rob ourselves of knowing our Buddha nature. It is so important to cultivate a gentle mind. So, Reverend Master Mayan talked about contentment a couple of weeks ago at a Sunday talk. And I believe that practicing contentment can be an antidote to jealousy. If we can be content with who we are, what our koans are, no matter how difficult, how our life is, having faith that we have what we need, that we can more easily have what we need, then we can more easily sit still and let go of jealousy. It's when we don't believe that we have what we need that jealousy can more easily take hold. I once told our former abbot that I didn't want to be me, and he said, "You have to be you, everyone else is taken." I thought that was great. I believe that another antidote to jealousy is the practice of mudita. Now, mudita is sympathetic joy at the good fortune of others. This is one of the 4 Brahmaviharas, or immeasurables, because they radiate in all directions to benefit all beings. So the 3 others are loving kindness, compassion, and equanimity. I looked up mudita, and I read that mudita can be encouraged by seeing the good qualities of others, especially people we have difficulty with. We miss their good qualities because we are so busy criticizing what we don't like. Then if we do this, if we look for the good qualities in others, then mudita has a better chance of arising at their good fortune, because we are not feeding our dislike. Regarding jealousy, as I said earlier, you can feel fine one moment, and then something arises that may be one aspect of your koan, and you are jealous and hurt, wanting something outside yourself more than knowing the stillness of the Buddha nature. And I have experienced this, where I was being still, and I saw something I wanted, and I wanted it more than being still. It was ridiculous. But it happens. We all have what we need, and getting what another person has will not make us happy. Let's see here. I have learned a lot about myself while preparing this talk. I think I already read that. Jealousy is very much linked with greed. I already said that. So I'm just going to end. It's nice to end with a nice little quote. So I'm going to end with my last quote from this booklet. The wisdom of this Buddha family, the one of jealousy, teaches us fearlessness, which is the knowledge that if we focus on the precepts and on training, then nothing that happens to us can harm the essential nature. And there is no time but now, because we do not know when we will find ourselves in circumstances that are very, very difficult to endure. Now is the time to develop the ability to be still. Now is the time to develop the discerning wisdom regarding the precepts. The obligation of those who enter into and train within the mandala of the precepts and the Dharma is to remain still when the world shakes. This is how we benefit others. All accomplishing action is often being still enough to know what is the essential thing that needs to be done. This is the Buddha family of faithfulness. And that's my talk. Thank you.